what's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch. I got guys an update on a significant pattern change that is expected to occur as we get farther and deeper into October. We also have a significant coastal storm that is expected to bring widespread impacts to the East Coast. I've got all the details coming right up, right? So thank you for joining me here on this Wednesday evening. We have a lot to talk about in this video, so we're going to be going over all the latest information on, again, our pretty significant stretch of weather across the United States. The main show or attraction, if you will, for this week is going to be our major coastal storm or nor'easter, which is expected to bring some widespread impacts to the East Coast. So that will be likely impacting, again, portions of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast by this weekend. So we're going to give you guys, again, all the latest details on that. But if we take a look here, starting out by looking at your current radar, you can see things are pretty quiet as of right now. However, we do have a couple of things to go over. One, we do have some showers and storms making their way through portions of the southeast United States. We do have a big old cold front that's sweeping its way down through the at least the northern half of the lower 48. You know, today we did get some rain showers that moved through. Since then, they have moved out, and they've been replaced with some very nice cooler air and lower dew points, so conditions will return to very nice as we get into at least the middle portion and late portion of this week. And then we also do have some showers and thunderstorms moving their way across portions of Arizona as well as New Mexico. Those will continue to move north for the next couple of hours. Not really expecting a flooding threat with those, but definitely just be aware if you do encounter any flood roads. Just make sure that you turn around and you do not drown. Alright, so we move things over here to your current alerts. We're going to take a look at your watches, warnings, and advisories. You can see we have a couple things going on. One, we do actually have a couple of flood watches going on for portions of southern Utah, southwestern Colorado, a lot of Arizona, as well as far southern California. So there is actually a very small, or I shouldn't say small, but there's a localized flooding threat here regarding those showers moving through the area, and this will likely continue for the next couple of hours as we are seeing two tropical systems work their way closer towards Baja California, and the remnants of those storms will make their way into the southwestern United States. Now, they will not be at, tropical storm and tropical depression status, but they will definitely still maintain some of that moisture to the point where we'll likely see a couple days straight of some showers and storms in this area. So make sure that you are, again, paying close attention to those road conditions, because obviously you really want to make sure that you are taking extra precautions if you do encounter flood roads over the next couple of days. Alright, but another thing we need to talk about here is across the Northeast. We are greeted to a couple of frost advisories going out from portions of central Wisconsin down into a lot of Michigan, northern Indiana, northwestern Ohio, a lot of upstate New York, northern and western PA, portions of West Virginia, as well as New Hampshire and Vermont. Alright, so anywhere in this cool blue shade, this is where we are expecting, again, to see likely some early season frost, again, with that latest cold front moving in. But that takes us to our next part of the update, where we do have freeze watches going out for portions of central and northern PA, as well as the Hudson Valley, all the way up towards Albany, New York, all of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, up towards coastal Maine, and all the way down into portions of extreme northern Virginia. We do have freeze watches, so again, very, very cold conditions, with many areas likely dipping below freezing at times in the overnight hours. So again, very, very cold conditions, below average temperatures are expected with this cold front. And we also do have some freeze warnings going out for portions of northern and central Michigan, as well as a few counties out here, in far upstate New York. So we move things over now to the GFS. We're going to be taking a look at the latest model run output and model guidance for our significant coastal storm and nor'easter that we are expecting to develop. So you can see, as of the latest GFS, is the 18Z GFS. You can see we do have a low pressure center. Let me change the color of my pen so you guys can see this. But this is your low pressure center developing down here just south of Florida. And this is getting ready to work its way up to the north and deal some pretty significant impacts towards all of the East Coast. So we take a look at the next couple of days. And the GFS does this rapidly organizing here, starting to circulate a little bit better with some more shower and thunderstorm activity already by really by Friday. And then as we get into Saturday, watch as that low pressure center really starts to wrap up. You even see some of those isobars circling around that low pressure center, again sitting at right around 1,004 millibars. This is when you're going to start to see some pretty significant organization. This is where you're going to start to see some of those bands of very heavy rain and gusty winds develop, already lashing parts of the Carolina coastline. Alright, so at this point, this is, again, a pretty strong storm system as we get into Friday afternoon and eventually Friday evening. And really, this should be around Saturday morning and afternoon. And then it continues to go up the East Coast. But watch how quickly this actually organizes and becomes a sub 1,000 millibar low. This does bring, once again, some pretty significant impacts towards the Carolina coastline. I think the Outer Banks are definitely going to get a period of very gusty winds, as well as potentially torrential rainfall at times. But this is organizing very rapidly. You can see very tight isobars here, again wrapping around the center of circulation. That is a sign of some very gusty winds, so I definitely do think that this thing is going to be dealing some very intense winds. But you have, again, all of these storms circulating, pushing all of this water from the Atlantic towards the East Coast. So that's going to bring not only, obviously, the rainfall, but also the extremely gusty winds right onto the immediate coastline, but as well as some very high waves and potentially some minor storm surge. So that is something we need to talk about. Alright, but this is as we're getting to Sunday. Again, Sunday afternoon, right around lunchtime. This is just off the coast of Delmarva here as a 995 millibar low, so a rapidly organizing storm system. And it continues to move to the north, and it does almost get sub 990. And as we're getting into late Sunday into Monday, this thing slows down as it becomes just off the coast of the northeast. Now it does start to dry out and does start to become disorganized, but you could see very widespread pockets of decently heavy rainfall across portions of New England, as well as, again, Delmarva just to the northwest of that center of circulation. So really, as we get into this weekend, we are likely going to be talking about some pretty significant impacts, again, all the way from Florida up towards New England. So I really do think that everyone on the East Coast needs to be prepared, and eventually we'll see a trough swing down and push this out to sea where it could actually become a tropical system. All right. So a lot of people are actually thinking that this is likely going to be like a tropical storm or even a hurricane. Now that is not true, because this is not going to have all the tropical features needed for being classified as a tropical storm, or in this case a named storm. So yes, it could definitely pack some tropical characteristics that would support this being either a high-end tropical storm or even a low-end Category 1 hurricane, but it's not entirely tropical, so that means that it's not going to be able to claim a name off the Atlantic 2025 hurricanes storm list. All right. So we move things over now to the Weather Prediction Center's 7-day precipitation outlook. So this should be giving us a good idea of how much rain is projected to fall here over the next couple of days within the full duration of this storm. And you can see quite a bit of rainfall as expected. We'll start out here in the Carolina coastline, where you can see some pockets of red and even some yellows on the immediate coastline. This is where we're talking about potentially 3 to 4, maybe even as high as 5 inches of rain. Again, all the way from the very northern Outer Banks of North Carolina all the way down towards South Carolina. Really the most widespread area or zone, I should say, for rainfall is going to be around 1 to 2 inches, and that's going to be pretty much halfway inland into South Carolina, so just up towards the Columbia area. But the farther towards the coastline you are, the more rainfall you are going to get from this system. So again, the immediate coastline is expected to see the most amount of rainfall. So really, the immediate coastline here is expected to see about 2 to 4 inches, but some spots could definitely get a little bit higher than that, especially if the storm does actually end up moving a little bit closer to the coast instead of kind of going around and then back up towards New England. So there's a couple different scenarios that are possible with this, but that brings us to our next zone a little bit farther north now into Delmarva, and this is when things get a little bit dicey, where we actually do get introduced to a few zones here of potentially 4 to 6 inches of rain. Again, really all the way from the Jersey coastline down through the Virginia coast, all the way down to Virginia Beach. Really, this is where I do think that we could have the potential to see right around 3 to 5, maybe even 3 to 6 inches, especially if you're on the Maryland or Delaware coastline. I really do think that this could be one of the hardest areas hit on the entire East Coast from the system. Alright, but that rainfall is likely going to start impacting by late Saturday night into Sunday morning. And then finally, we take a look at our folks out here into southern New England, and this is another area where I really do think we could see some pretty significant impacts as far as excessive rain goes. I definitely do think some flash flooding is going to be possible in some of these areas where really we're expecting to see about 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. Again, the highest totals being on the immediate coastline, but even farther inland, a good half an inch to an inch and a half of rain is definitely going to be possible, especially if you're in those purple, whites, or those blue shaded areas. All right. So speaking of excessive rainfall, we now look at the Day 5 excessive rainfall outlook from the Weather Prediction Center. And you can see we actually do have a pretty concerning outlook here. We already do have a slight risk, which is at least a 15% chance of seeing flash flooding, or I should say excessive rainfall, within 25 miles of a given location. So you can see that slight risk is including portions of Long Island down into central and southern New Jersey, southeastern PA, all the way through coastal Delmarva, and then all the way into the Outer Banks here, anywhere in this yellow shade. Again, this is where we have our slight risk for seeing excessive rainfall, and then in our green shade we have our marginal risk. So really this gives you guys an idea of who we are expected to see, or who is expected to see the most amount of rain from the system. And again, this is definitely expected to change over the next couple of days, but it is certainly a pretty concerning signal that we definitely cannot ignore. And then finally, I do want to take a look now at the GFS for your wind gusts. This is going to be a really big part of the system as far as impacts go. And you can see that as we get into Friday, already we are talking about some pretty significant wind gusts wrapping around that center of circulation. Just off the coast of the Carolinas, you're already talking about wind gusts potentially from 40 even up to 50 miles per hour. Again, around the center of circulation, but even on the Carolina coastline, we're going to be talking about 30 to 40 mile per hour winds, and that is going to quickly increase as we get into Saturday and eventually Sunday once this thing really starts to kick into high gear. Again, things won't be too crazy down here, but I really do think that there could be a couple areas to watch, especially along the immediate coastline, where we could end up seeing a pocket of 30 to 40 mile per hour winds as we get into late Friday night and Saturday morning. But you can see that center of low pressure is continuing to move off to the north there, and this really starts to ramp up as it really passes just by the Carolinas. If you are on the very outer banks of North Carolina, especially on the kind of the higher end of there, this is, or the more northern end, I should say, this is where we're going to start to be talking about potentially wind gusts between 40 and 50 miles per hour, so much more significant wind gusts projected there. Keep in mind also the entire New England coastline at this point is already seeing about 30 to 40 mile per hour winds. So definitely a very intense pocket or period of time here as far as damaging wind gusts goes. But this storm continues to move off to the north, and then it really starts to hammer the coastline. And then again, this is as we're getting into Sunday afternoon and Sunday night. The GFS is going for a pocket of 50 to 60 mile per hour winds, really all along the southern New England coastline down towards Delmarva, so New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, all the way down to up to Massachusetts, anywhere on the immediate coastline. This is where we are really worried for the potential of up to 60 mile per hour winds. And look offshore, we're talking about winds that are approaching 70 miles per hour. So we could actually zoom in here on our folks out here in southern New England for a closer look. But these winds are going to be absolutely gusting. I mean, they're going to be ripping out there. Again, likely as we get into Sunday evening and overnight Sunday, we are really once again worried about that threat for some significant damaging winds, but this would likely bring some widespread power outages, again, where some areas are expected to gust anywhere from 60, maybe even as high as 70 miles per hour. But really from the immediate coastline of, once again, Massachusetts down towards Rhode Island, Connecticut, and especially the east end of Long Island, this is where, in this gold shade, I do think there is a chance for seeing a localized 70 mile per hour wind gust, which again is just a few miles per hour shy from hurricane force. So this is not a hurricane, it's a nor'easter, but we are definitely going to have the chance to see at least high-end tropical storm force and potentially even low-end Category 1 force damaging winds here. But again, this time frame would be right around 8 p.m. Sunday, so mark your calendars. This is 8 p.m. Sunday, where the GFS is going for a pretty significant and loud evening again, all across southern New England, so from Boston down towards New York City and all the way down to Philadelphia. We are talking about wind gusts upwards of 40 miles per hour, with wind gusts approaching 60 and potentially even up to 70 miles per hour at the immediate coastline. So eventually that storm does move on out, lifting to the north, but still you're going to get a pocket of 40 to 50 mile per hour winds, especially if you're on the northeast coastline up towards Maine, as well as the rest of eastern Massachusetts. Alright, so after that, we take a look now once again at the GFS. What's going to be happening once we get rid of this system? Well, we have another storm system at the same time that is starting to get its act together across the northern plains. We are expecting it to drop quite a bit of snow, actually, across portions of southern Canada. Now, will this make its way into the extreme northern United States? It's possible, but very unlikely that we're going to see any significant accumulations. So maybe in the very high elevation, we could get some light snow flurries, but really nothing much other than that. Alright, and so we take a look at the next couple of days after that. We do get a little bit more of a southern tracking winter storm, or I shouldn't say winter storm, but storm system to develop across the high plains, and this does actually bring some light snowfall, light to moderate snow across portions of the mountain northwest. So at this point, we would likely be talking about a couple inches potentially of very extreme elevation snow accumulation, but even into North Dakota, I mean, the GFS is going for a pocket of some pretty light to moderate snowfall as we get into the middle of next week. So this is already just about a week out, so still a lot of stuff needed to figure out. But if we do see that 540 line dip a little bit farther to the south, I do think that could bring enough cold air to support some snowfall. And then at this point, we're getting into La La Land. But to give you guys a glimpse of what the rest of October could look like, I mean, we do actually see a pretty significant storm system, almost a robust storm system on the GFS, again, over a week out, but you do get, again, a very strong storm system, about 989 millibars, to track across the central United States, likely bringing all hazards here, including snowfall. So I do think that we are going to enter a pretty active pattern here, unlike the past couple of weeks, and then at this point, we're getting pretty far out. So a couple more storm systems are on the table here for the United States. And with that, we are expected to see, again, at least one more shot of cold air, especially into the northwestern United States. This is looking at the temperature anomalies here through October 13th. You can see quite the Arctic blast. I shouldn't say Arctic blast, but quite the cold front moving down from portions of western Canada. We do get that classic Central Plains ridge to set up here, pumping lots of moisture and warm air into the eastern United States, while the western United States stays very, very cold. And again, very below average temperatures are therefore ushered in. And eventually we do see, again, that warmer pattern take over, at least for the eastern United States. So likely going to see relatively above average temperatures for the foreseeable future. But I definitely do think that we could see some pretty below average temperatures for the northern United States, especially the northwest, as we get into the middle part of October. Alright, and for the last part of the update, we'll skip that part, just because I want to show that in a different video. But this will be the last part of the update. We look at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook here from the Climate Prediction Center. This was issued October 8th, so actually this was issued today, but this is valid for October 14th to 18th. You can see we do have, as expected, kind of mirroring what the GFS was showing, a pretty high above average spot for above normal temperatures here across the central United States. Again, with that ridge building, we likely see the bulk of the lower 48 experience above average temperatures. But you can see also the signal for that cold front to move through across the west, where we do actually have a spot of below average temperatures. So kind of two clashing air masses here expected over the next couple of days. But I really do think that we could see some instances of much cooler conditions across the west and warmer conditions across the central and eastern United States. Alright, so that's going to wrap the video. I hope you guys had a great day. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, as well as consider donating to the PayPal. Make sure you're staying safe out there if you are getting impacted by any of these storm systems. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video.